The evening that shattered my world began like any other Tuesday. I was hunched over my laptop in our marble-countered kitchen, reviewing expansion plans for my consulting firm when Isabella burst through the front door, her Louboutin heels announcing her arrival with sharp clicks against the hardwood floor. "Marcus, we need to discuss my situation immediately," she declared, tossing her Hermes bag onto the counter and fixing me with that demanding stare I'd grown to dread. I glanced up from my financial projections, already feeling my jaw tense. Her situation had been the same for weeks, an obsession with upgrading from her perfectly functional Audi A6 to the new electric Porsche Taycan that her friend Catherine had recently acquired. "What's wrong now?" I asked, trying to keep the exhaustion out of my voice. We'd circled this conversation at least 4 times in the past month. Isabella dramatically threw herself into the chair across from me, her carefully styled blonde hair catching the light from our expensive pendant fixtures. "The Blackstone charity auction is next Friday, and everyone, literally everyone, will be there with their new electric vehicles. Do you understand how humiliating it will be for me to arrive in that ancient gas-powered relic?" I closed my laptop slowly, recognizing the signs of an impending storm. "Your Audi is 18 months old, Isabella. It's hardly ancient by anyone's standards. 18 months is a lifetime in luxury automotive cycles," she snapped, her green eyes flashing with indignation. Catherine's husband understood the importance of image when he bought her the Taycan. Even that nobody, Sandra Kim from the law firm, just got a BMW iX. "People notice these things, Marcus." I rubbed my forehead, feeling a familiar headache building. "We just invested $300,000 in opening the Denver office. The timing isn't ideal for another $80,000 purchase we don't actually need." Isabella's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Don't need? My professional reputation is built on projecting success. How can I convince clients to trust me with their public relations when I can't even maintain a current image myself?" "Your current car project's plenty of success," I countered. "We can revisit this in 6 months when the Denver expansion is generating revenue." She slammed her manicured hand on the granite countertop, making my coffee mug jump. 6 months. "Marcus, the Morrison Tech launch party is in 3 weeks. I already told everyone about my new Porsche. What am I supposed to do now? Show up in that outdated machine and admit my fiancée is too cheap to keep me competitive?" Something cold settled in my chest. For 2 years, I'd been gradually reshaping myself to fit Isabella's vision of the perfect partner. I'd traded my comfortable downtown apartment for this pretentious suburban mansion. I'd replaced my casual wardrobe with designer suits that cost more than some people's monthly salary. I'd even changed my social circle to accommodate her networking demands. "Isabella, that car cost $75,000 2 years ago," I said quietly. "By no reasonable measure is it outdated." Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "You know what your problem is, Marcus? You still think like someone who grew up in middle management. You can't shake that provincial mindset, no matter how successful your business becomes." I remained silent, which only fueled her anger further. "Don't think I don't have options," she continued, her voice dropping to that silky, threatening tone that always preceded her cruelest verbal attacks. "Do you see what you're getting?" She gestured to her perfectly sculpted figure, displayed to advantage in the designer dress I'd bought her for her recent birthday. "Men would line up around the block for what you have." When I still didn't respond, something calculating shifted in her expression. "I could have you replaced in 48 hours, she said coldly. "One phone call to the right person, one Instagram post, and I'd have 10 better options by Thursday. You're a placeholder, Marcus. A convenient arrangement until something superior comes along." The words hung in the air between us like poison. In that crystalline moment, I saw our entire future laid out before me, years of these escalating demands, her perpetual dissatisfaction, my growing resentment as we both became increasingly twisted versions of ourselves. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back from the table. "Is that really how you see me?" I asked calmly. "A placeholder?" Isabella seemed startled by my composure. She'd expected me to plead, to negotiate, to scramble to appease her as I had so many times before. "Well, if you're going to be stubborn about things that matter to me, then yes." I nodded thoughtfully. "Then maybe I should clear the space so you can start interviewing replacements." Her confident expression faltered. "What are you talking about?" Without another word, I walked to our bedroom and retrieved my leather duffel bag from the walk-in closet she'd insisted on renovating last year. I could hear her heels clicking rapidly behind me as I began methodically packing. "What do you think you're doing?" Her voice had lost its edge, replaced by genuine confusion. "Making room for my replacement," I replied, carefully folding clothes into the bag. 48 hours, right? You'll need the space to conduct interviews." "You're being ridiculous," she scoffed, though I caught the nervous tremor in her voice. I was making a point. "Put those things away." I continued packing, adding my toiletries and electronic devices. I took only what was indisputably mine, nothing we'd purchased together, nothing that could be used as ammunition in future arguments. "Marcus, stop this nonsense." Her tone shifted to the manipulative sweetness she employed when her anger tactics failed. "You know I didn't mean it literally." I zipped the duffel bag and turned to face her. "Actually, I think you meant every word. And you know what? You deserve someone who sees you as more than a placeholder too." Her face cycled through confusion, rage, and something approaching panic as I headed toward the front door. "You can't just leave," she said, her voice rising. "Where are you even going? This is childish, Marcus. What about the Morrison party? What about our engagement photos next month?" I paused at the door, setting my house keys on the marble entry table. "I'm sure one of those 10 better options will be happy to step in. If you walk out that door," she threatened, her voice cracking with precisely calibrated emotion, "don't think you can crawl back tomorrow when you realize what you've thrown away. There won't be a place for you here." I shouldered my bag and opened the door. "I won't be coming back, Isabella. Good luck finding that upgrade. I hope you get everything you're looking for." The warm evening air felt cleansing as I threw my bag into my pickup truck, the one vehicle purchase Isabella had never been able to bully me into changing, despite numerous attempts. My hands were steady as I started the engine, but my mind was racing. 2 years with Isabella ended in a single conversation. Or perhaps it had been ending for much longer, and I'd simply refused to acknowledge it. I drove aimlessly through the city for nearly an hour before calling the one person I knew I could trust. "Marcus? It's almost 11. Sarah's sleepy voice answered on the third ring. "Everything okay?" "Not really," I admitted, pulling into a 24-hour diner's parking lot. "I left Isabella." "It's over." There was a pause. "For real this time?" The question stung because it was fair. I'd threatened to leave twice before, only to be drawn back by Isabella's tears and promises to change. "For real," I confirmed. "I don't suppose you know any decent hotels that won't charge me a fortune for a last-minute room?" "Don't be an idiot," Sarah said, suddenly sounding fully awake. "You're coming here. I'll set up the guest room." "Sarah, I don't want to impose." "Marcus Chen, how many times did you let me crash on your couch when my apartment flooded last year? You're coming here. I'll text you the gate code." An hour later, I was sitting in Sarah's living room with a beer in hand, recounting the entire confrontation. Sarah and I had been friends since our MBA program, long before I'd met Isabella. She'd always been the voice of reason in my life, which probably explained why Isabella had worked so hard to minimize our friendship over the years. She actually said you were a placeholder? Sarah shook her head, her photographer's eye taking in the details of my disheveled state. Her exact words were that I could be replaced in 48 hours. Sarah took a long sip of her beer. You know, I kept my mouth shut at your engagement party, but I have to say it now, Isabella has always treated you like an accessory, not a partner. The truth in her words hit hard. I slumped back against her couch, suddenly feeling the weight of the evening's events. I've been such an idiot, I muttered. No, Sarah said firmly. You were in love. There's a difference. Isabella is exceptionally good at making people see what she wants them to see. What do I do now? I asked, more to myself than to her. Now, Sarah said, taking the empty bottle from my hand, you get some sleep. Tomorrow, you call your lawyer. Then you remember who you were before Isabella decided you needed a complete personality makeover. I managed a small smile. When did you become so wise? Around the same time you became so blind, she teased gently. It's going to be okay, Marcus. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but eventually. That night, I slept better than I had in months. I woke to my phone buzzing incessantly on Sarah's coffee table, 19 missed calls from Isabella, 42 text messages that ranged from fury to desperate apologies, and 3 voicemails that alternated between sobbing and threats. I scrolled through the messages, feeling strangely detached from the emotional manipulation that would have worked on me just 24 hours earlier. The final text caught my attention. I didn't mean what I said. Please come home so we can work this out. I love you more than anything. I've already called the Porsche dealer to cancel my inquiry. For a moment, I felt the familiar pull, the urge to smooth things over, to return to the comfortable routine of our life together. It would be so easy to go back, to convince myself this time would be different. Instead, I opened Instagram and posted a simple sunrise photo from Sarah's balcony with the caption, "New chapter begins with clear vision." Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. Not just Isabella this time, but mutual friends, her family members, even business contacts, all asking what was happening. I silenced the notifications and went to find coffee. Sarah was already in her kitchen, hair tied back in a messy bun, making breakfast. I heard your phone having a nervous breakdown, she said, sliding a mug toward me. Social media aftermath, I confirmed, taking a grateful sip. I've never actually broken up with someone this publicly before. Is it always this complicated? Only when you're engaged to a PR executive with a social media addiction and control issues. She placed a plate of eggs in front of me. Eat. Then we're making a plan. The plan was surprisingly straightforward: call my lawyer, change all my passwords, redirect my mail, remove access to shared accounts and credit cards. Small, practical steps toward disentangling my life from Isabella's web of control. You should check her Instagram, Sarah suggested as we finished breakfast. Know what you're dealing with. I hesitated, then pulled up Isabella's profile. My stomach sank as I scrolled through her recent stories. Elegant dinner photos with carefully cropped companions. Cryptic captions about leveling up. A mirror selfie in a dress I'd never seen with the text, "Watch me rise from the ashes." Each post was expertly crafted to show how unaffected she was, how quickly she was moving on from our relationship. Well, Sarah said, looking over my shoulder, she's certainly committed to the narrative. 48 hours, I muttered. She's actually trying to prove she can replace me in 48 hours. Let her try, Sarah said, taking my phone and placing it face down on the table. Meanwhile, you're going to focus on rebuilding your life, starting with a workout to burn off some of this stress. The next few days settled into an unexpectedly peaceful rhythm. Mornings at the gym, days at my office focusing on the business I'd neglected during the chaos of my relationship with Isabella. Evenings with Sarah, planning my next steps forward. I found a modern apartment close to my company's headquarters and furnished it with my own preferences for the first time in years. No compromising on color schemes or arguing about the necessity of a $1,000 accent chair. Every decision was entirely my own. Isabella's social media campaign continued relentlessly. Each post seemed more desperate than the last, though expertly disguised as someone living their best newly single life. Photos with different men at trendy restaurants, check-ins at exclusive events, a constant stream of unbothered content that screamed the opposite to anyone paying attention. A week after our breakup, my lawyer called with news. She's contesting the asset division, he informed me. Claims she's entitled to a portion of your business equity since her professional guidance and social connections were instrumental in your success. I actually laughed. She's been to my office exactly twice in 2 years. She couldn't even tell you what my company does beyond something with consulting. Nevertheless, she's hired Marcus Chen, no relation, I assume, who specializes in extracting maximum settlements in high-profile breakups. Fine, I said after a moment of consideration. Give them everything they're asking for. I'm sorry, what? My lawyer sounded genuinely alarmed. All our financial records, communications, documentation. Everything, I said, feeling an odd sense of calm. Including the prenuptial agreement she signed where she specifically waived any claim to my business assets. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. I see where you're going with this. Make them waste time and resources building a case that collapses the moment we present the prenup. Exactly. Isabella never thought I'd actually leave her. She probably doesn't even remember what she signed. That evening, I shared the conversation with Sarah over takeout in my new apartment. That's brilliant, she said, twirling noodles around her fork. But also slightly terrifying. When did you get so strategic? I shrugged. Running a business teaches you to think several moves ahead. Besides, Isabella isn't the only one who understands how to play public relations games. Sarah studied me carefully. You've changed this past week. Had to happen eventually, I replied, surprised by how genuine my smile felt. You know what's strange? I don't even miss her. I miss the idea of what we might have been, but not who we actually were together. That's called clarity, Sarah said softly. It looks good on you. Our eyes met across the small dining table, and something shifted in the space between us. I'd always found Sarah attractive, it was an objective fact, like acknowledging that sunsets were beautiful. But I'd never allowed myself to think beyond that observation. She was my friend. I was with Isabella. Neither of those barriers existed anymore. Sarah cleared her throat and stood to collect the empty containers. Anyway, you should focus on the legal situation right now. Everything else can wait. She was right, of course, but for the first time since leaving Isabella, I found myself thinking about possibilities rather than just problems. The next morning brought an unexpected complication. My friend David called while I was driving to work, sounding genuinely concerned. Man, have you seen what Isabella's been saying about you online? He asked without preamble. I'd been deliberately avoiding social media. What's she saying now? It's bad, Marcus. She's telling people you were controlling, that you manipulated her financially, isolated her from friends. She's got half the city thinking you're some kind of emotional abuser. I nearly ran a red light, braking hard at the last second. She's what? Check your email. I sent you screenshots. I pulled into the nearest parking lot and opened David's email. There they were, Isabella's tearful Instagram stories, carefully crafted posts painting herself as the victim of a calculating, controlling partner. She'd even created a highlights reel titled, "Healing Journey," filled with vague references to recognizing manipulation tactics and finally finding her voice. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. This wasn't just petty revenge, this was systematic character assassination. In a city where business relationships and personal reputations were deeply interconnected, this could cause real damage to my career. David, you know none of this is true, right? I needed at least one person to believe me. Of course I know that. I've watched you both for years. Isabella's always been. He trailed off diplomatically. A manipulative narcissist. I suggested. He laughed nervously. Your words, not mine. Look, most people who actually know you aren't buying it, but she has a large following and people love drama. After ending the call, I immediately contacted my lawyer. His advice was clear: document everything, don't engage publicly, and accelerate our legal timeline. The more desperate she gets, the more mistakes she'll make, he assured me. I spent the rest of the drive to my office in a state of cold fury. Not because of the lies, I'd expected those, but because of how effortlessly Isabella had slipped into the victim role, how expertly she was manipulating public sympathy. When I arrived at work, my assistant Jennifer's expression told me the news had already spread through our industry circles. I'm guessing you've seen the posts, I said, stopping at her desk. Everyone has, she replied uncomfortably. HR's already fielded calls from 2 business journalists asking for comment. Perfect. I rubbed my temples, feeling a stress headache forming. Tell HR to direct all inquiries to our legal team. And Jennifer, I'm sorry you got dragged into this mess. Don't worry about me, she said firmly. For what it's worth, nobody here believes a word of it. We've all seen how Isabella treated you at company events. I nodded gratefully and headed into my office, closing the door behind me. Playing defense wasn't going to be enough. Isabella was too skilled at narrative manipulation, too connected in certain social circles. I needed to change the game entirely. An idea began forming, risky, potentially messy, but with a certain poetic justice to it. I picked up my phone and called someone Isabella would never expect me to contact. Mrs. Castellanos, this is Marcus Chen. I think we need to talk about your daughter. Victoria Castellanos had never approved of me. As the wife of a prominent real estate developer and heir to old Austin money, she'd had higher aspirations for her only daughter than a nouveau riche tech consultant, as she'd once described me at a particularly uncomfortable holiday dinner. But if there was one thing Victoria valued above social status, it was protecting the family reputation, which is why she agreed to meet me at a discreet coffee shop far from her usual social haunts. I'll give you 10 minutes, she said by way of greeting, her Chanel suit immaculate despite the Texas heat. Though I can't imagine what you could say that would interest me after how you've treated Isabella. With respect, Mrs. Castellanos, you've only heard one version of events. I slid a manila folder across the small table. I thought you might be interested in the complete picture. She eyed the folder suspiciously. What is this? Financial records, text messages, security footage from our home. I kept my voice level. Evidence of behavior I've been covering up for years out of respect for your family. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand hovered over the folder. What kind of behavior? The kind that would devastate Castellanos' development if it became public, particularly the incidents involving your husband's business associates. Her face paled slightly. I don't believe you. Page 7, the Henderson Charity After Party, I said quietly. She opened the folder, flipping quickly to the indicated page. I watched her expression shift from skepticism to shock to something approaching horror as she absorbed the documented evidence of Isabella's inappropriate behavior with married business contacts. This can't be accurate, she whispered, looking up at me with her social mask finally slipping. It is, and there's more. I leaned forward slightly. I'm not here to threaten you, Mrs. Castellanos. I have no intention of making any of this public. I simply want Isabella to retract her false statements and agree to a quiet, dignified separation. Victoria closed the folder with trembling hands. Why are you showing me this instead of using it against her legally? Because despite everything, I don't want to destroy her or your family's reputation, I replied honestly. I just want to move forward with my life. She studied me for a long moment, her calculating gaze taking in details she'd missed before. You know, I never understood what she saw in you initially, your background, your industry, but I think I'm beginning to comprehend. I'll take that as progress. Don't. She stood, clutching the folder tightly. I'll speak with Isabella and my husband. This ends today. I watched her walk away, feeling no satisfaction, only a deep exhaustion. The evidence I'd shown her was authentic, screenshots of Isabella's inappropriate communications with married men, receipts for expenses she'd hidden from me, security footage of her explosive temper when she thought no one was recording. All things I'd ignored or rationalized during our relationship. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. How did the meeting go? I replied simply, it's finished. The effects of my conversation with Victoria Castellanos were swift and comprehensive. Within hours, Isabella's inflammatory social media posts vanished. Her healing journey highlights disappeared. In their place appeared a single, carefully worded statement. After reflection, I want to clarify that my recent emotional posts were inappropriate responses to a private situation. Marcus Chen has always conducted himself with integrity, and any suggestion otherwise came from my own pain during our separation. I regret any confusion and ask for privacy as we finalize our relationship. When I showed the post to Sarah that evening, she whistled softly. What exactly did you say to her mother? The truth, I replied, setting my phone aside. Sometimes that's more powerful than any threat. Well, whatever you did worked. Sarah hesitated. But you realize this isn't over, right? Isabella's just regrouping. Probably, I agreed. But at least now she knows I won't just roll over and accept whatever she dishes out. The following day proved Sarah's prediction accurate. While Isabella maintained her public silence, her lawyer delivered a new set of demands, significantly more reasonable than her initial claims, but still seeking a substantial financial settlement. She's testing boundaries, my attorney explained. Seeing how much she can extract now that the public pressure campaign failed. Counter with exactly what the prenup specifies, I instructed. Not a penny more. 2 days of legal negotiation followed. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction of complex problems I actually knew how to solve. In the evenings, Sarah would bring dinner and we'd talk about everything except Isabella, my business expansion plans, her photography projects, our shared memories from business school. On Friday, my lawyer called with unexpected news. She's withdrawing all claims beyond the prenuptial provisions, he reported, sounding pleasantly surprised. Apparently, she's accepted a position in Seattle and wants to expedite the divorce. Seattle? I repeated, stunned. Isabella had always sworn she'd never leave Austin, where her family connections gave her social power and influence. Some executive position at a tech startup. Her lawyer indicated she's eager to make a fresh start away from painful memories. I could hear the skepticism in his voice, which matched my own feelings. That seems convenient. Very convenient, but if it results in a clean separation, I'm not inclined to question her motives. After ending the call, I sat in my office, turning this development over in my mind. It felt too easy, too neat. Isabella didn't surrender, it wasn't in her nature to simply walk away from a fight. I called David, who worked in the tech industry and seemed to know everyone. What do you know about executive PR positions at Seattle startups? I asked. Specific question, he noted. Any particular reason? Isabella supposedly took a job there. Convenient timing. Interesting. I heard typing in the background. Let me check. Oh, wait. Didn't you hear about the situation with Robert Kim leaving Amazon last month? Big scandal, very hush-hush. He and Isabella were pretty cozy at that charity auction earlier this year. Understanding dawned. Cozy how? The kind of cozy that had people talking, especially since his wife was visiting family in Korea at the time. The pieces clicked together. Thanks, David. That explains everything. I immediately called Sarah. Isabella's running away with Robert Kim, I announced when she answered. The Amazon guy? Isn't he married? Was married, apparently. I just put it together. She's not taking a job in Seattle, she's following him there. Sarah was quiet for a moment. How do you feel about that? I considered the question carefully. Relieved, mostly. If she's focused on him, she's not focused on making my life difficult. True. Sarah sounded hesitant. Does it bother you that she moved on so quickly? Honestly? No. And it was true. Where I'd expected jealousy or hurt, there was only a hollow sort of amusement. She said she could replace me in 48 hours. Turns out she had the replacement lined up all along. Marcus. Sarah's voice softened. I need to tell you something. Something I probably should have mentioned a long time ago. My stomach tightened. What is it? Not over the phone. Can you come over tonight? I'll be there in an hour. Sarah's apartment was dimly lit when I arrived, candles flickering on her coffee table next to an open bottle of wine. She looked nervous, pacing as she waited for me. This feels serious, I said, accepting the glass she offered. It is. She sat down, gesturing for me to join her on the couch. I need to show you something. She handed me her phone, open to a text conversation with someone labeled simply as Izzy. The messages dated back nearly 18 months, long before Isabella and I were engaged. I scrolled through, my blood running cold as I absorbed the content. Isabella complaining about me, strategizing about how to upgrade my image, discussing other men she was seeing behind my back, mocking my business goals, my preferences, even the engagement ring I'd saved months to afford. How long have you had these? I asked quietly. Sarah looked miserable. Since they started. She thought I was her friend, someone who'd take her side. She kept sending them even after I stopped responding. Why didn't you tell me? I tried initially. Remember that dinner after you moved in together when I suggested maybe you were rushing things? I did remember. I dismissed her concerns, convinced she was just being overprotective. You were so happy, Marcus. Or you seemed happy, she said helplessly. I didn't want to be the person who ruined that without concrete proof. And by the time I had proof, by then I wouldn't have believed you anyway, I finished. It was true. I'd been so completely under Isabella's influence, so convinced of our perfect relationship, that I'd have dismissed any evidence to the contrary. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. I should have tried harder to make you see. I handed her phone back, my mind reeling with this new information. All those times Isabella had claimed to be working late or having girls' nights. The mysterious weekend conferences, the unexplained charges on our shared accounts. There's something else, Sarah said, scrolling to a more recent message. This came yesterday. A single text from Isabella, I hope you're satisfied now. You've wanted him for yourself since business school. Congratulations on playing the long game. I looked up sharply. What is she talking about? Sarah's cheeks flushed. She set the phone down, unable to meet my eyes. She always suspected I had feelings for you. It was part of why she tried to push me out of your life. And did you? I asked, my heart suddenly racing. Have feelings for me? The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths. Yes, she finally admitted. But that's not why I'm showing you these messages. I need you to understand who she really is, regardless of how you feel about me. I reached across the couch and took her hand. Sarah, look at me. She raised her eyes, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. I've spent 2 years with someone who saw me as a project, a status symbol, a temporary solution, I said, squeezing her hand gently. Do you know what I realized when I left? The person I most wanted to call, the one I trusted to help me pick up the pieces, was you. It's always been you, Marcus, she said softly. I'm not saying this because of the messages or because you're rebounding or because I'm angry at Isabella. I'm saying it because it's true. She searched my face, looking for any sign of doubt or hesitation. What happens when the divorce is final and you've had time to process everything? What if you change your mind? Then we'll figure it out together. I moved closer, still holding her hand. I'm not asking for promises, Sarah. I'm just asking for a chance, for both of us. She smiled then, genuinely, in a way that reached her eyes. I think I can handle that. As we leaned toward each other, her phone buzzed with another message from Isabella. Neither of us bothered to check it. Some chapters were meant to close completely. Over the following weeks, things progressed quickly on multiple fronts. My divorce proceedings accelerated, with Isabella signing all documents without contest from her new life in Seattle. According to David's industry gossip, she and Robert Kim had already moved in together in a waterfront condo, posting carefully curated photos of their Pacific Northwest adventures. Meanwhile, my relationship with Sarah evolved naturally from friendship into something deeper and more authentic. We moved slowly, both aware of the complex emotions involved, but there was an ease between us that I'd never experienced with anyone else. No games, no hidden agendas, no constant performance, just two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. My business thrived with my renewed focus and energy. We landed 3 major contracts that had been stalled in negotiations for months, and I finally implemented the expansion strategies I'd been planning when Isabella was demanding her luxury car upgrade. Life was settling into a new, healthier normal, which should have been my first warning that another disruption was coming. It arrived on a Wednesday afternoon in the form of an urgent call from my lawyer. Isabella's back in town, he said without preamble, and she's trying to reopen the settlement. I stepped away from my desk, lowering my voice. On what grounds? She already signed everything. She's claiming duress. Says she only agreed to the terms because she felt threatened by you and pressured by her family. I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling a familiar stress headache beginning. That's absurd. She's the one who wanted to expedite everything so she could move to Seattle. Apparently, Mr. Kim's situation has become complicated. His wife is contesting their divorce more aggressively than expected, which means his assets are tied up in legal proceedings. Understanding dawned. So Isabella's funding dried up. Precisely. And now she's back, looking for alternative financial sources. What are her chances of success? Honestly, minimal. But that may not be the point. I think she's hoping you'll settle just to avoid the hassle of fighting it. Not happening, I said firmly. Fight it with everything we have. After ending the call, I immediately texted Sarah, Isabella's back. Legal problems incoming. Her response was immediate, on my way to your office. Don't do anything until I get there. By the time Sarah arrived, I'd already received 5 calls from unknown numbers and a series of increasingly frantic emails from Isabella herself, ranging from tearful pleas to barely veiled threats. "She's spiraling," Sarah observed, reading through the emails on my computer screen. "Look at the timestamps, these are getting closer together. She's panicking. My lawyer thinks she's broke. Kim's wife froze his assets during their divorce proceedings." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. Isabella's never had her own money, she went from her parents' accounts to yours to his. And now she wants back on mine." I closed the email window in disgust. "Not going to happen. She'll escalate," Sarah warned. "You know how she operates. When manipulation fails, she tries destruction." As if summoned by her words, my phone rang. "Jennifer from the front desk. Mr. Chen, Isabella Castellanos is here demanding to see you. Security wants to know how you'd like them to handle it." I exchanged a look with Sarah. "Tell them to escort her out peacefully but firmly. I'm not available." "Yes, sir." Even through my closed office door, I could hear the commotion. Isabella's voice rising in pitch and volume as security explained she needed to leave. "This is ridiculous. I'm his fiancée. Marcus. I know you can hear me." Sarah winced. "Ex-fiancée. Is she delusional, or just desperate?" "Both, probably." I rubbed my temples. "This is going to get worse before it gets better." She reached across the desk and took my hand. "We'll handle it together." The shouting eventually faded as Isabella was escorted from the building, but the peace was short-lived. My phone immediately began buzzing with text messages. "You're making a huge mistake, Marcus. I know about you and that photographer. You think you've won, but you have no idea what I'm capable of." I showed the messages to Sarah, who read them with growing concern. "We need to document everything," she said, "and probably get a restraining order. Already forwarding these to my lawyer." I sent the screenshots. "Let's get out of here through the back exit. I need some air and distance." We avoided the main lobby, taking the back exit to the parking garage. As we walked toward my truck, Sarah suddenly stopped, grabbing my arm. "Your vehicle," she said quietly, pointing ahead. The sight made my stomach drop. My pickup's tires were slashed, the word "traitor" scratched deep into the paint across the driver's side door. "Security cameras," I muttered, pulling out my phone. "This garage has surveillance everywhere." Within hours, we had the footage. Isabella in dark sunglasses and a baseball cap, methodically vandalizing my truck before walking away with a satisfied expression. The restraining order was granted the next morning, and police issued a citation for property damage based on the same footage. But Isabella was just beginning her campaign of harassment. The next phase targeted Sarah directly. It started with a flood of one-star reviews on her photography website from obviously fake accounts. Then came the canceled bookings, longtime clients suddenly backing out with vague excuses. "She's telling people I'm unstable," Sarah reported after one particularly uncomfortable phone call. "That I stole her fiancé and am now under investigation for stalking." I was furious. "That's clear defamation. We can sue her for this." "With what proof?" Sarah ran her hands through her hair, stress evident in every gesture. "It's all whisper campaigns and innuendo. Besides, a lawsuit would just drag this out longer." She was right, but that didn't make it easier to watch someone I cared about suffer because of my past choices. "What if we turned the tables?" I suggested, an idea forming. "Used her own tactics against her." Sarah looked skeptical. "Meaning what?" "Not rumors, truth. Every industry has forums where people share information about problematic clients, dangerous situations, people to avoid. What if we created a resource for people to share their documented experiences with Isabella? A warning system, Sarah mused, warming to the concept. It could protect others from getting caught in her web. We spent that evening building a simple, professional website titled The Isabella Files. It contained nothing but verified incidents, the vandalism with police report numbers, screenshots of her threatening messages, documented history of her false claims. At the bottom, we added a secure contact form. If you have had similar experiences with Isabella Castellanos that you wish to document, please reach out. Within 48 hours, the inbox was overflowing. Former friends with stories of betrayal, business contacts who'd been manipulated, even an ex-boyfriend from college who shared a frighteningly similar account of emotional abuse and financial exploitation. We carefully vetted everything, requiring documentation where possible, confirming identities. Only the most clearly substantiated accounts were added to the site. The impact was immediate and decisive. Isabella's social media accounts went dark. Her attempts to reopen the divorce settlement were suddenly withdrawn. According to David, who remained our source for industry gossip, she'd become radioactive in Austin's professional circles. People are sharing that site everywhere, he reported. I heard the Castellanos family's annual charity gala was cancelled because they couldn't get sponsors. I felt no satisfaction in this outcome, only weary relief. We'd never intended to destroy her, we just needed her to stop her harassment campaign. Sometimes the best defense is a strong offense, Sarah pointed out. You gave her every opportunity to walk away with dignity. She was right. We'd taken no action until Isabella had made it clear she wouldn't stop until she'd ruined both our lives. As my divorce was finally, irrevocably finalized, I couldn't help feeling a complex mix of emotions. Not regret exactly, but a kind of mourning for the relationship I'd thought I had, for the future I'd once imagined. It's natural to feel conflicted, Sarah assured me as we shared a quiet dinner celebrating the end of the legal proceedings. You loved the person you thought she was. And now I love the person I know you are, I replied, reaching for her hand. No illusions, no projections, just us, exactly as we are. Her smile was worth every difficult moment of the ordeal we'd endured together. 6 months later, life had found a new, healthier rhythm. Sarah and I moved in together, combining our styles into a home that felt authentic rather than like a showcase. My business continued expanding successfully, and Sarah's photography had pivoted toward commercial work after the damage to her reputation in certain social circles. We heard about Isabella occasionally through Austin's social network. After Robert Kim was forced to return to his wife by court order, apparently his prenup was more solid than he'd hoped, Isabella had attempted to re-establish herself in Seattle. But doors that had once been open suddenly closed. She'd eventually moved back to her parents' guest house, a humiliating retreat for someone who'd built her identity on social climbing. According to the rumors, she was cycling through a series of increasingly unsuitable relationships, each ending more dramatically than the last. Her professional reputation, once her most valuable asset, was in ruins. The Isabella Files had spread beyond Austin, becoming a cautionary tale in PR circles nationwide. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd stayed? Sarah asked one evening as we sat on our balcony, watching the sunset over the Austin skyline. Sometimes, I admitted. But then I remember how exhausting it was to constantly manage her expectations, her moods, her demands. How much energy it took just to maintain the facade of that relationship. I pulled her closer. Now I have enough energy to actually live my life, to build something real with someone who wants me as I am, not some idealized version that doesn't exist. She rested her head on my shoulder. For what it's worth, I prefer the real you. Even the part that leaves coffee cups everywhere and forgets to water plants. Especially that part, she laughed. It makes you human. My phone buzzed with a news alert, something I'd set up months ago when we first created the website. I read it, then showed it to Sarah without comment. Local socialite critically injured in DUI crash, the headline read. The brief article described how Isabella had been driving under the influence after leaving an upscale bar, lost control of her vehicle, and crashed into a concrete barrier. She'd survived but sustained severe injuries that would require extensive reconstructive surgery. That could have been your future, Sarah said quietly. No, I corrected her. That would have been my responsibility to manage, but never my choice to make. She creates her own consequences. 2 days later, we received an unexpected visitor. Victoria Castellanos stood in our living room, looking decades older than when I'd last seen her. I won't stay long, she said stiffly. I thought you should know, the doctors say Isabella's injuries will have lasting effects. Her modeling contracts have all been terminated. I nodded, unsure what response she expected. She keeps asking for you, Victoria continued, her voice brittle. In her more lucid moments, she seems to think you'll come back now that she needs someone. I'm sorry for your family's pain, I said carefully. But that chapter of my life is permanently closed. Victoria's eyes moved to Sarah, who stood supportively beside me. I understand. She turned toward the door, then paused. You know, I always told Isabella that beauty fades, that she needed to develop character and substance. She never listened. After she left, Sarah and I sat in contemplative silence. Are you okay? Sarah finally asked. I think so, I said, taking her hand. It's tragic what happened to Isabella, but it doesn't change anything for us. She nodded. It's strange how life works out. If she hadn't said those words that night, I could replace you in 48 hours, we might not be here now. Then I suppose I owe her that much, I said, pulling Sarah closer. One moment of honesty that changed everything. 48 hours to find a replacement. Isabella had unknowingly given me the greatest gift of all, the courage to walk away and discover what had been waiting for me all along.